Okay, everybody, we're getting started here on globalization. This is actually part 2 of globalization. Today I'm going to go over some of the reasons why there's been such an increase in globalization in the 20th and 21st centuries. Okay, and there will be some pauses to answer some questions as we go along through this. So, first thing, a little bit of history of globalization. Historians often argue that globalization really started in the late 1400s when you had all those explorers, including Columbus and da Gama, sailing all over the world. Prior to that, there had been little direct contact with one another. People between Europe and the Americas definitely, but also Southern and Eastern Africa was out of that side. With Europe and also Asia. I mean, a lot of this was all done through middlemen as trade passed along the world. There was worldwide trade, at least East hemisphere-wide trade in the what's called the Eastern Hemisphere, the Old World. The New World, the Americas, not as much because they didn't have the technology to do it. But after the turning point of the Age of Exploration, the pace of globalization increased because of innovations in technology and motivations to gain wealth and exchange culture. And we've tracked a lot of those as we've gone through the course in the current climate of the 21st century that we live in, and even part of the cause of the coronavirus is related to this global intertwining of everything. A lot has changed since the 15th century. So as we go through, we're gonna have some descriptions of the methods of the globalization spread. I'm going to talk about some. I will also have some posted in the notes when the questions come up so that you can refer back to them. And you're going to explain how we address some of these needs today. All right, so little comparison here. In the 15th century, okay, people communicated over long distances. They wrote letters that were carried by messengers or on foot, horseback, or by ship. All of this took a long time. The longer the distance, the longer it took. Ships in those days moved along at maybe, a couple of miles an hour. You think they're sail-powered ships. Any of you have ever been in a sailboat, unless the wind is really howling, you're not moving real fast, okay? Or they were man-powered rowed boats, and unless you had a whole team of galley slaves like they had in the old Roman Empire, again, you didn't move very fast. Today, we communicate over long distance by airplane, by ship, by phone, and especially by internet. Okay, you can talk to China. I mean, I remember the commercials about talking to Chinese. Just what we're doing right here with me recording a video at my house for you to watch at your house. Always we communicate instantaneously around the world. Trade over long distance was often conducted on foot with the help of horse-drawn wagons or on ships later to markets where they were sold by buyers in persons. And if traders from Europe or Africa wanted to trade in the Americas, it took 8 to 12 weeks to sail from England to Boston. Okay, you guys have heard the tales of the explorers and how long it took. When Magellan sailed around the world, it took almost 3 years. Now, granted, he made some stops and there were problems along the way. Nowadays, you can do it. Stuff travels around the world on an airplane. You can fly around the world on an airplane in about 24 hours. Okay, trade over long distances takes place over airplane, though not anything of huge quantities because obviously the weight issue gets in there. We have trains running across all the continents. We have ships. We have long-haul truckers. We have all sorts of ways to do this. They're all powered. Back in the old days, it was either wind power or muscle power that moved everything, and this has caused probably the biggest change of it all. Okay, so reasons for the increase in globalization, and I'm going to take each of these in turn. First one would be the innovation in communication technology. Then we have the innovations in transportations, the promotion and increase of free trade, and then kind of the underlying aspects of this is the availability and access to inexpensive and highly skilled labor. And this is, in some cases, the downside. This is why you have stuff. If you look at the clothes that you're wearing, like we did on the last assignment, most of them's not made anywhere near where you live because they're made where people will make these things for a lot less money. Okay, so let's get into the first one, the innovation in communication technology. What we're doing right here is living it. okay? From the innovations in communications. Since the establishment of the first civilizations, innovations in communications technology have made it easier and faster for people to communicate over long distances. In the 20th and 21st centuries, the speed of innovation has accelerated, making it possible for us to communicate with one another across the globe in real time on cell phones as we walk down the street. Through the internet, we can buy goods made by people who live on a different continent and transfer money to them with the click of a button, even if we use different currency. The innovations that have made this possible have increased the rate of globalization. Okay, and here you have just a couple charts in the innovation of communication technology. You look at 1990s, we're talking less than 30 years. We've gone from basically no internet to 50 billion people by 2015 you are using the internet, and more than half the people use it. Per 100 people, you got almost half of them using the internet, and I'm sure that number is much higher today because that's only till 2015. Cellular subscriptions, okay, per 100 people, we went from basically no cell phones. There was a few. I mean, you had to be wealthy to have like a phone in your car and things like that. It was definitely, now pretty much everybody has one. Some people have multiples. Okay, the next innovation is in transportation. 20th and 21st century innovations in transportation, specifically having to do with shipping, has made it easier and less expensive for goods to be transported from one place to the other. This has opened up new possibilities for where goods are produced and where they can be sold, which has brought most of the world to a globalized economy. So if you look at the 1960s, how fast the ships were, how many containers they can hold, how big they were, and you look at today, how fast they are. They've almost nearly doubled their speed. They're almost 8 times more containers. The length is a lot. The width is bigger. The length is bigger. Everything. Okay, so everything. These giant container ships move stuff around the world, and then those containers are popped onto trucks, and then they move. The other thing is the promotion and increase of free trade. Okay. Free trade is the name given to the international trade in which there are no restrictions on what is traded and how much is traded or how much it costs. And this is a big, big issue going on right now because there's a lot of people that don't like free trade. A lot of people have been harmed by free trade. And this is at the kind of the root of President Trump's economic policies, whether you agree or disagree with him or not. He's really latched onto this as the issue that he's going to deal with. And a lot of people feel that they've been harmed by that, including maybe yourself. Okay. Countries prevent free trades by requiring companies to pay tariffs, which is simply a tax on goods they import or export, or by establishing quotas on how much you can do. A country can use tariffs and quotas to either encourage or discourage trade. For example, country A might raise tariffs on imports to discourage computer companies from selling in country B, from country B to selling their laptops in country A. Country B's computer companies would be less likely to sell laptops in country A because they have to pay money to country A's government in the form of tariffs, and doing so would lessen their profit. It also makes their product more expensive, so maybe they're less apt to be bought. Okay? People who support free trade view tariffs and quotas as barriers to trade and want to get rid of them so that companies and workers can move freely across international borders to make and sell their goods and services. They believe that doing this, companies will be able to make products as inexpensively or as possible, and people will be free to move to where they can find work most easily. And in the end, more people will have jobs. Companies will make more profits. Consumers will get the goods and services at the best price. Right now, there's really no examples of pure free trade, but several organizations are working to make that a reality. When barriers to trade like tariffs and quotas are lifted, pace of globalization is accelerated because businesses see the opportunity to make more profit. So they build more factories where labor is inexpensive, more stores where people are wealthy enough to purchase the goods, and the places where the factories and stores are built and where the companies are headquarters are then more interconnected. Okay, so organizations that promote this, okay, some organizations promote free trade because it serves their interests. the actions they have taken to make free trade a reality, and for some reasons why globalization has increased in the 20th and 21st centuries. So I'm going to have you answer some questions here about two organizations, multinational corporations and the World Trade Organization. Okay, the first one are multinational corporations. The example given here is Nike, but there's hundreds of these. Okay, and I'm going to post this information in the notes on the question to answer these questions. Okay. A multinational corporation is simply a business that controls productions of goods and services in more than one country. Okay. Often call it an international or transnational. Some of the most well-known of these are McDonald's, clothing manufacturers like Nike, who have factories around the world. McDonald's, who has restaurants around the world, and they kind of tailor their menu to everything. Why do they support the free trade? Because businesses are able to profit the most if they keep their costs of materials and manufacturing very, very low while selling at the higher price. Different parts of the world have what you call different standards of living, meaning how much it costs to live in that country, how much it costs to live in that country, and the level of wealth in that country. Free trade enables multinational corporations to buy materials at the lowest cost possible without paying tariffs. Because of free trade, they can build their factories in the lowest cost countries, and then they can sell their things which cost almost little to nothing, and make a ton of money off them. So there's a lot of that going on there. The other things are places like the World Trade Organization. The World Trade Organization is an international organization that negotiates trade agreements between countries, and through their agreements, which most countries in the world sign, the WTO sets the rules for international trade. And I'll have this information posted in with the questions about the WTO also. So why does it support free trade? It supports free trade because, according to the website, they believe that trade without restrictions encourages economic activities in all countries involved, and that if by following the same rules, the trade will be fairer. So the idea is it's going to be free, it's going to be fair, everybody plays by the same rules, and gradually it's this whole idea of a rising tide raising all boats. Everybody does better. Okay, finally, kind of the root of those last couple things is the availability and access to not only inexpensive but also highly skilled labor. Okay, the map on the right shows the global minimum wages per hour in U.S. dollars. States and subnational jurisdictions that have less than 20,000 kilometers in area with data available are shown as colored circles. No circles are shown for small states without data. So if you look, the most expensive places to live, Australia, Europe, moving down a little bit to Canada, the United States, and some of those places, those are the places where manufacturing is expensive. That's going to drive down the want to do this, and people are going to look to the countries that you see in the gray and the very, very light blue as places to put your factories so that you can take advantage of low-cost labor. Okay. The map on the right shows the average education of the inhabitants of each country, and it falls into three broad categories: high, medium, and low. Educational development, the largest dark green and the most expensive. If we just think back to that last map on the minimum wages, the highest educated countries, the darkest colors are the most educated. Those are also the most expensive to do business in. The ones that are the yellow or the orange and the red, those are places that are going to have the lowest lowest skilled workers, and you want to try to find places that have high skilled workers, like a China that's in the light green, or maybe Indonesia, to make your products. Mexico is in there, so that they can make the products correctly, but also do it at a lower price. Okay, so make sure you're answering all the questions within the video, and this final question